Somewhere in Deltona, Florida, there's a guy probably with some faded stickers stuck right smack dab in the middle of his windows. I didn't realize it initially, but I very quickly realized, hey, this is really gonna be like a poison pill competitive edge for us. If our competitors do it, it'll destroy them. I don't know if they knew they were like buying stuff from a 15-year-old kid. We started promoting it, and then we learned very quickly, hey, this is gonna be really challenging. But I think, we're really well positioned, better than I would have ever really imagined and could have imagined. We're really positioned for kind of some explosive growth. At the time, I thought it was very expensive. I had no idea how much more, just how much more we'd end up having to spend on it. Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee Break with Jake. I am so glad to have you all here. For those of you that have been on the call, you know that we have this call almost every Friday at 11 a.m. And the purpose of the call is to bring together industry professionals from all over the country and in some cases all over the world to share best practices, to talk about challenges, opportunities, to share their experiences and their insights. And usually I have folks that are much smarter than me on the call, and we do have folks much smarter than me on the call today. But instead of me interviewing them, Tyler's going to be interviewing me. All right, and we'll get started. Today we're going to be talking about kind of a little bit about my story, how I got here, and my experience, kind of starting things out from a closet in my dad's alarm company to being here today with Tyler and a really awesome team. So Tyler, I'll let you kind of kick things off. I don't want to run the show here. So
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today, Jake. I'm excited for this conversation. You and I sit down a couple hours every week to talk about the present state of SS&Si and our future goals, but I rarely get the chance to do what I'm going to do today, sit here and pick your brain about the past and where we've been and how we've gotten to this point. I've been here next month. It'll be a year already since I started working
wow.
here. So in the short year that I've been working here, we've doubled our physical footprint, gone from 2 branches to 4. We've been recognized on the Inc. 5000 list. We've grown a lot. The growth isn't slowing down. In this interview today, I hope that you can help me understand how all that happened, because in my head, the math isn't mathing. Distribution, you always say, isn't the best business to get into.
No,
But
I
the
I don't think
success that
I'd do
you
it again.
the success that you've gotten hasn't been an accident, though. So I'm excited to see how it's come about. Before we get to the success, why don't we go back to what you just said, working in a closet in your dad's alarm business. You grew up in the alarm industry. What was that like for you? And are you surprised with where you ended up, or did you always expect to kind of stay in the security industry?
Yeah, no, it's great. I do want to point out that I think the maths once you realize that you started here almost a year ago and now we're continuing to grow. We've doubled our branch footprint. So I
I
think we
think I
could
came on
attribute a
close to
lot.
the right time.
Yeah, I think we can attribute a lot to all the effort that you put into our marketing and communication. So thank you for that. Going back to kind of the beginning, I always tell folks I'm the son of an alarm salesman. My dad started in the industry as a door-to-door salesman selling alarm systems. For those of you that are like kind of recoiling at the thought of door-to-door alarm sales, I will say this. I think alarm system sales door to door can be done honestly and ethically and effectively, and was really, really enjoyed even as a young kid, kind of watching my dad demonstrate that. One of the stories I tell folks is we would be driving around as a family, going wherever we were going, and dad would see a U-Haul, and a U-Haul meant that somebody was moving, right? And when people move, they need an alarm system. And so if we saw a U-Haul turning into a neighborhood, I always remember we would follow that U-Haul in, and we would like, I guess, stalk these people to their new house. It seemed normal as a kid. Looking back, maybe that's not so normal. Uh, but then we'd sit in the car, dad would walk up, introduce himself, and walk inside. I imagine he probably sat down at the kitchen table with and, welcome to the neighborhood, and sold him an alarm system. And he'd come out and tell us, and we'd all be excited in the back seat. And so I always say, like, I think about, growing up in the family alarm business, even before my involvement in actually working at the office. I think just kind of witnessing kind of sales 101 had a real impact on me. And then I did get a chance. Dad bought an alarm company. I think it was 98 that he bought alarm company, a J&J Security. And from that point on, I guess what, I would have been about 7 or so. I can't tell you how many times me and my siblings would be sitting there folding invoices, stuffing envelopes, licking and sealing envelopes and putting a stamp on it. That was kind of my first start working. I can still taste the envelope adhesive now, and I never want to lick another envelope. But it's funny because I talked to so many folks that grew up in a family alarm business, and they had almost the same experience. It was like they did exactly that, the stuffing envelopes and all that. And then I always talk about, gosh, looking back, I'm really starting to put the pieces together on how I was destined, not doomed, I would say destined to stay and remain in the alarm business, because even our family vacations were first alert conferences. For those of you on the call that are, familiar with, Honeywell, Ademco, Residio, whatever it is now today. Back in the day, there was a first alert program, and I went to a lot of those conferences, and I sat with really awesome family-owned businesses. And even today, like just last week, I was talking to Randy Morrison in Anchorage, Alaska, and I first met Randy and his wife at a First Alert conference when I was like a kid, and then like he's a customer of mine now. So it's just kind of wild to see how things have progressed to that point. But yeah, so I did end up I did end up kind of working as more of a technician at one point in the business as well, which was kind of neat.
Yeah. Do you, remember your first install or service call in that role?
Yeah, that's
Like,
that's funny. Actually, I have installed exactly one alarm system in my life, and I did it poorly. I don't know how I ended up. I think that as a teenager, the receptionist might have been doing this as a joke, because looking back, it doesn't make sense. But the receptionist was like, "Hey, there's a guy that is interested in buying an alarm system, and he wants to talk to Jake." And now, like, obviously, it was a joke. She was messing with me, but this guy ended up buying an alarm system, and I probably gave everything away, but then I went out and, like, tried to, like, install this stuff, and it was crooked, and the guy put up his own stickers. The guy put up his own stickers. He asked for extra stickers, and I remember they were, like, in the middle of his windows, like, not in a corner, not like smack dab in the middle of his windows. And Dad, I'm sorry, because there's probably somebody out there that, like, thinks that that's how you guys installed alarm systems and how you put up stickers. But somewhere in Deltona, Florida, there's a guy probably with some faded stickers stuck right smack dab in the middle of his windows. So yeah, that was. And then I did mostly, like, I helped with pre-wires and stuff. So, I was pulling wires, I was drilling holes and stuff I probably shouldn't have drilled holes in. I remember, climbing through some of the rafters, pulling some wire in the summer, and I have a fear of heights, and I could still, like, vividly remember we were pulling wire in this huge house, and, like, I looked down, and I guess this guy's living room must have been like a ballroom or something, because I looked down and it was like 40 feet down. And gosh, it kind of gives me the chills now thinking of it, but I didn't fall, so that's good news.
um, so you realize you can't install alarm equipment straight. You're afraid of heights. You're bad at drilling holes. So what was the next step? Was distribution next, or what was after that?
So my dad was able to buy the equipment at substantial discounts because of all the work he was doing with builders and stuff. And he would always end up with surplus stock. Some of you may be familiar with this, and I don't know how they do things today, but back then it was a lot of kits. Like everything came in a kit. And so you would buy the kit because it was cheaper to buy the kit than to buy the individual stuff, but you ended up with, like, all this extra stuff. And so my job was to take that extra stuff and sell it on eBay. And so like I guess I was in high school and selling products on eBay. And at first, I thought, okay, this is going to be like, just a lot of random people buying these parts on eBay. But what I found was it was a lot of small alarm companies that were buying this surplus inventory from me on eBay. And so I figured out that, eBay charged exorbitant fees to sell on eBay. And I realized that if I just called those people that were buying it, these small alarm companies, that they could buy it directly from me. I could avoid the eBay fees. And so that's what I did. They would buy it. I'd request their information. And then I had a Magic. Do you remember Magic Jack, Tyler?
No, I don't.
Okay, so Magic Jack was like this little device you could plug into your computer, and it was like, I don't know, it was like a phone line, like a voice over IP, basically. You could plug a traditional phone into it, and man, I had, like, this Magic Jack, and I had this cheapo phone, and I would call these small alarm companies, like, every week, and I'd say, "Hey, what else do you need?" And I don't know if they knew they were, like, buying stuff from a 15-year-old kid, but I sold a lot of stuff, and I remember I had dad told me to put their information on note cards, and I'd have these note cards with, like, the company information, and then on the back, I had notes on when I called them last, and we worked through the list. And I remember when we upgraded from, like, 1 Magic Jack to, like, 2 or 3 Magic Jacks, that, like, business was good, It was like, yeah, if we had to figure out some way to link these Magic Jacks together, and that was fun. I think by the time I guess at some point, I was selling so much stuff on there, and people were complaining to their local distributor that, like, "Hey, I could buy this stuff cheaper from this kid in Florida on eBay than I could get it at, the supply house." And then I remember one day we were on vacation, and the VP of sales at Honeywell calls my dad and says, "George, it's been really great doing business with you, but we're done with that because, you guys are doing this eBay stuff." And my heart sunk. I thought, like, this is the end of it. But instead, I mean, that would have been 2008, 2009. The economy had kind of tanked, and rather than shutting us down, they put some guardrails on it, and they're like, "Hey, like, you need to only sell to alarm companies." And I'm like, "Cool, that's all I wanna sell to," right? But I guess at that point, we went from this kinda eBay business that had begun as kind of a side hustle in high school to a quasi distributor, not really a distributor because we only had, like, the one line. And, for a number of reasons, that wasn't gonna be a good long-term strategy. Like, the supply house that we were buying the equipment from always had the upper hand. If I won an account, they could win it back easily. And so, I remember I was really adamant. I wanted to figure out how we got another product line, and we ended up thankfully being able to leverage the business with them to win a direct account eventually with DSC, and they'd invested shortly after in a small company called Qualsys. And I'd say, like, kind of the rest is history from there.
So those early experiences working with your dad, working on the eBay shop, what's something that you've taken from that that you still apply to your business today? Or what are some lessons you learned from those times?
Going back to, my dad selling alarm systems door to door, he had a rule. He knew that he had to knock on enough doors to talk to 20 people to sell an alarm system. And that didn't mean he had to knock on 20 doors. It's very important to clarify this because if there's folks in here that have done sales, they could easily misunderstand that to mean he had to knock on 20 doors to sell an alarm system. It really wasn't knocking on 20 doors. It was knocking on enough doors that he got to talk to 20 people, that he got to sell them an alarm system. And that didn't mean actually that he wouldn't sell 2 or 3 or 4 alarm systems and talking to 20 people. It was a mental it was a mindset, right? Like, "Hey, I need to talk to 20 people to sell an alarm system." So, after talking to 10 people, if he hadn't sold an alarm system, he wouldn't be discouraged. He'd say, "Well, I need to talk to at least 10 more people," right? And so, I don't know that the math was I don't know that the math was exactly right. I think the mindset was exactly right. That, if your goal is a sale and you know that contacts result in sales, then you have to get the certain number of contacts. I think I applied the same I think I applied really the same kind of strategy to my outbound calling to these folks that, were their information was neatly written. I don't know how neat it was because I wrote it and I have terrible handwriting, but their information was written on a note card. I knew I had to call so many people in order to sell them more wireless transmitters or more Vista 20p control panels. And once I realized that those customer contacts did result in more sales, I think that was really the unlock for me, right? There's a lot of things in business that you can solve for with really smart people. Like, you may have operational challenges, you might have product challenges, and some things you may just not be able to control, but there is something that you can control, which is the effort that you put into sales. And I think that's really like if I had to boil it down, I really think that the lessons I learned as it relates to sales, really from my dad and growing up in that business, that's what I've taken with me. I'm not a brilliant operator. I am not, I don't think I'm a brilliant manager. Sorry, Tyler. Sorry to, let you down there. I think I think what I inherited was a real tenacity and a mindset of, hey, I've got to talk to a lot of people if I want to sell more stuff. So yeah, I would say that's probably what I took from me that and then doing right by people, right? Because it doesn't matter how many people you talk to or how good you are as a salesperson. If you don't deliver, all of that will be short-term gains, right? I think that step 1 is hustle, step 2 is, deliver, right? And when you deliver consistently, and that just magnifies and amplifies the results of hustling. So, yeah.
You can't control what people say yes or no. You can't control the output, but focus on what you can control, which is the input, the quantity, also the quality, what you're putting in. You reap what you sow, is what I'm
100%.
hearing. So how did we go from eBay to SS&Si? What was the transition there?
Yeah, so they needed a way to explain away they really needed a way to explain away how we were able to have these discounts, right? Because it wasn't so much about externally. Externally, it didn't matter, but internally within, the corporate offices up there in Melville and all their individual branch locations that might call and complain about this kid in Florida. They needed a way to explain it away. And so the sales rep at the time, who's a very good friend, and I guess to protect his innocence here, I won't say who it was, but some of you guys probably know who it was. He said, we got to call this a dealer program, right? And so, because dealer programs offer discounts to their dealers. And so the company name is Security Sales and Solutions Inc. And I thought, well, everybody does acronyms, so let's call it SS&Si. Looking back, I probably wouldn't have put so many S's in it, but then at the end we threw in dealer network, and that was kind of not only was it a way to kind of explain how we could offer these discounts, but it really aligned with what my vision was for what we could be, which is more than a supplier, right? It was like, hey, how do we provide value to these folks? And it was some additional marketing support that we did for them. Early on, it was kind of some mind share, not quite as, I guess, focused and maybe as efficient as we do it today. But I think it was the early beginnings of that. So yeah, I guess the dealer network, SS&Si dealer network came from out of necessity to explain, what we were, but again, I think also really aligned with what we were to become.
Did you have an idea of where it was going to go and what it was going to become at that point?
No, no, I thought it was like this is a cool thing. We're selling a lot of stuff. I went to college and eventually I thought maybe I'd go to law school or something. I didn't do that. I ended up kind of just staying even while I was in school. I went to night school. So, I worked during the day and then I went to night school and I worked at night school while I probably should have been paying more attention to the classes. And then by the end of college, even though I hadn't planned, I don't know that I could say I ever said, "Hey, this is what I'm gonna do." But I think by the time I graduated from college, I'm like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." Like this isn't like a big distribution company, but hey, we're putting some points on the board. We're winning some business. We're building some really deep relationships, and so, I ended up, and I'm glad I did. I joke that I wouldn't go back and be in the distribution business again, and there's some truth to that. I think the distributions business is a hard business, but I'm glad I ended up in something really challenging because it gave me an opportunity, I think, to challenge myself and figure out, hey, how can I take this really, really hard to scale business, highly commoditized. We sell the same products at the same price as everybody else and win business, not just locally, but on a national level. So I guess I'm glad I ended up here.
I'm glad you did too. You talked about how hard it is to grow a distribution business and how commoditized it is. And one thing that sets us apart is obviously the branding program. That's something that we push a lot. That's something that separates us. That's something we invest a lot in. Can you talk a little bit about that investment? What does that require?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. I think that, I said we were putting some points up on the board, but we were doing, I mean, by the time I graduated college, maybe a couple $1,000,000 a year in sales. And I should say to some folks, a couple million, that sounds like a lot. In the distribution business, rookie numbers, right? We got to get those numbers up. For the first, after I graduated college, I graduated in 2011, and then things were really, really flat. I mean, I just couldn't get sales up. And then I would say really the change happened in 2019. A couple of things happened there. Number one, I ended up sponsoring and then eventually buying the Facebook group Burglar Alarms Online that some of you may be familiar with. Um, I opened our first satellite office in Huntsville, Alabama, our branch there. But I also made an investment in our first printer. My dad was, again, he'd been a part of the First Alert program. They offered private labeling, like they were kind of little sticker inserts that would go into the keypad with your logo. There had been some other companies over the years that had done, various branding programs. One in particular that years before we got into it, they leveraged branding to win some really big national accounts. And I had in my head, I'm like, gosh, I think that this could be our way to separate ourselves as a distributor. Again, we sell the same products, same price as everybody else. But what if we did this free branding program? Because whether it's a small company or a big company, I think if you've been in business for yourself, you recognize what your brand name means to you. I think it means a lot to you. And so I made the investment in this printer. At the time I thought it was very expensive. I had no idea how much more, I mean, just how much more we'd end up having to spend on it. But I remember I bought this printer from this little sign shop and I was so nervous writing her the check. Chris, who he knows, my right-hand man, he helped us figure out how we're going to print on this thing. We started promoting it, and then we learned very quickly, hey, this is going to be really challenging, right? Because not only are we having to print on all these different products with logos that people send us in like low quality format that we're going to have to redraw. We've got to set up special tooling for each new product. We needed more help with, we had to have graphic designers on staff. We had to have folks that actually understood how to not only how to run the printers, but how to maintain them. And then, remember I'd opened our second location in Huntsville. And originally I thought like, okay, we're just going to have printer in Florida. And that started to take off. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to need a printer in Huntsville. And, now we're printing more. And then our printer in Huntsville went down. It was some kind of service issue. And something happened that blew my mind. People, even local customers to Huntsville, rather than picking up unbranded products at the branch, They said, "We'd rather wait for you to ship it from Florida." And I'm like, "Whoa, this is," I thought this is like a nice thing, but I realized once people had it, they didn't wanna not have it. And then it totally honestly, like, it totally changed the strategy for me because I realized, hey, if this is hard for us, how much harder would it be for our largest competitors to do this very same thing across all of their branch locations, right? And so I realized, we're going to do this. We're going to do it right. We're going to systemize it. And we're going to figure out how we get from somebody's low quality logo to a redrawn vector logo to having mock ups on all the different products, and we're going to do it really well and really efficiently because I recognized while it was hard, it was something we could do. We could manage it. We could scale with it. And it was incremental costs that we added to win business as opposed to for our competitors, they try to do the math on it and they say, well, this is incremental cost on all the business we already have, right? And so I didn't realize it initially, but I very quickly realized, hey, this is really going to be like a poison pill competitive edge for us. If our competitors do it, it'll destroy them. Or in the best case scenario for them, it'll level the playing field because now people are willing to wait for the branding. And so we invest. So that first printer, I think I bought it cheap. It was thousands of dollars. The last printer I bought was $85,000. And I'm like, this is something that's not just a this is not just an operational challenge, but like we're spending some real money on this. I think it's worth it. I'm a I'm a big picture guy, only because I have too much ADHD to really focus on the little picture too much. But I look at it and I say, okay, we're spending all this money on printers. We have I think seven printers now. And we've got all this other equipment to help us set up the tooling. And then we have somebody order one Qualsys panel from us and we print it. And now there might be some really sharp operators on the call. And these are guys that have their costs really, dialed in. They know exactly how much it costs them to serve a customer. And they would say, well, Jake, that's bad business. Like you can't do that. Somebody buys an alarm panel and you might make 20 bucks on that. You're going to unpack it, print their logo on it, ship it to them. That's crazy. But it is crazy. And big picture, we're seeing it work out. And so, I say that, you asked me about the investment in the equipment and the people. I think it's also an investment in each of our dealer partners, no matter where they are at in their journey. They're like, hey, I'm willing to take a loss. I'm willing to take a loss to win your business and support your business because I want you to go from buying one Qualsys panel from us to buying 20, 40, 50, 100 Qualsys panels at a time from us. And I think it's a worthwhile investment, right? It's not just an investment in people and equipment here, but it's an investment in our dealer partners. And so far it seems to be paying dividends.
It shows it's the investment in the customer. It shows you believe in the customer. I think it also really shows that you believe in what we're providing and the value that we're providing to know that, hey, we can start you where you're at, but we know you're going to grow with us. We know we're going to provide what you need to have the tools and the resources to grow beyond your wildest dreams. It's
100%.
yesterday we had a team meeting and a word that came up a few times was scrappy. How scrappy we are and how scrappy our growth has been, and that's what I'm hearing as you're talking is that part of the reason our success has come is because we were small enough and agile enough that as problems came up, as opportunities came up, we could adjust and meet those needs.
I to that, just to that point, I've heard it said by a number of people to scale the unscalable and growing a business and trying to really separate yourself, particularly early on, is to figure out something that you can do that is unscalable and do it anyways. And if you can figure out a way to scale it, well, great, do that. But scrappiness, you have to be scrappy if you're willing to do that, right? Because there's a lot of folks that they just don't have it in them. They're like, this is hard. This is a lot of work. We just lost money on that customer. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is a terrible idea. That's like, you got to put your head down, put in the work, make the investments, and just and look at it as like, hey, this is a long-term play, and I think that's really that's got to be the mindset.
Let's talk about you a little bit. I talked about SS&SI's success over the past year, but you've also had some personal growth. You've been recognized as one of the top 40 leaders under 40, Security Innovator Award. You won that this year. And you just got elected at the ESA board. So you have a lot of involvement in this industry outside of what you do with SS&Si. So can you talk a little bit about that? ESA, TMA, some other associations that you've been a part of. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, well, thanks, and I hope I haven't peaked, like, it's like we got a lot of recognition this year. I'm like, "Man, we gotta save some stuff, space it out." But no, I think for me, what I learned very early on is that if you wanna be successful in an industry, whatever that industry is, you need to be committed to it, right? And some of those things, they're not just it's not just transactional. It's not just, "Hey, like, I'm gonna pay for this sponsorship, and I'm gonna get something back," or, "I'm gonna pay to be a member of this association, and I'm gonna get something back." I really believe that it's important to invest in the industry, and that's why we're a member of I don't know how many state alarm associations. I'm always approving memberships for state alarm associations. If we're not a member of your state alarm association, you probably just haven't talked to one of the guys yet. We'd be happy to join, but we are also a member of ESA, of TMA. I was really, the security systems news under 40 thing, very 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 thankful for that. The security innovator, thankful for that. But one of the coolest things, like kind of the quiet recognitions that I'm most proud of is that I was invited to by Jay Han, the former CTO of ADT, invited me to join CISC, which is the standards consensus body over SIA and TMA. And like nobody knows. Like if I tell people I'm like, hey, I'm a voting member of CISC, they're like, the heck is that? Like I don't know what that is. They're like, are you, security systems dues under 40? Like, yeah, that, but listen, CISC is actually pretty cool. It's this consensus body that gets to decide on, kind of finalization of standards. And so I'm a big believer. If anybody follows me, they know how passionate I am about the opportunity for video monitoring. And I think one of the things that's going to drive that forward is the TMA AVS-01 standard, which some people much smarter than I am had the opportunity, they put in the work to get this standard written, and then I was just very thankful to be, a member of CISC and get to kind of finalize and vote to say, yeah, let's move forward with this. I don't know. I just think it's again, I think our customers see that. I think our vendors see that, and I think the industry at large sees like, hey, we're not just a distributor, right? Like we're not just the guys selling parts and yeah, we put your logo on it. That's cool and that's exciting. But I think most folks can see we're very, very committed to the industry. And, to some degree, I don't care about the specific ROI on it. I think it's worthwhile to invest in your industry. And that's not just money, that's time. And I don't know if I answered your question. So I hope I did.
Yeah, I think you did. So now we talked before how you show how you believe in the customer, how you believe in yourself. Now we're showing how we believe in the industry as a whole, that we're making this world a better place. It's not just about money, it's about making a difference. Would you say that that outlook and that commitment to the industry as a whole has contributed to your business success? Or what would you say to a dealer who maybe isn't committed at the same level, involved in all these different organizations? Is that something that's important, you think?
Yeah, I think Dad always said that if you wanted to sell something, you had to believe in it. And if you believe in it, you can sell it. And I think that when you make the decision to invest the time and the money in organizations within the industry, that is you believing in it, right? Like that's an investment in saying like, hey, I believe in the electronic security industry. So I'm a member of ESA, right? Whether that means I'm gonna get, business or not, I very much believe in the importance of this industry, and I think it's a superpower, man. I really do. I think that when you make investments in the things that you believe in, it solidifies, that belief within you, and I think it supercharges your ability to sell, whatever it is that you're selling, whether that's, security products or insurance, I don't know, whatever it is, if you believe in it, you can sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. That passion shows through you. Humans are smart. We can tell if somebody's feeding us something that they believe in or just feeding us something to get a paycheck, you know?
Well, and
Um,
I think it also attracts certain people. Even, like I think about like, hey, you joined the team almost a year ago. We've had some really awesome people join the team. I think that there's when it's very clear what you believe in, people that are aligned in with the same values are attracted to you and your company. And so like I hear about people that are like, "Hey, it's really hard to find people." And I'm like, "God, I get 5 people a week messaging me on LinkedIn like, "Hey, can I come work with you guys?" And I wish I could hire them all. But the point is, yeah, I think people can see it and it's not just about your customers. I think it's about like, "Hey, if we want to build our team, the folks on the outside looking in should know what we stand for."
for sure. We've got about 10, 15 minutes left in this call. I have more questions for you, but I want to give people a chance to drop it in the chat if you guys have any questions for Jake that you definitely want answered before this is over. I see one question in here about your dad. Who trained your dad? How did your dad get into this industry?
Oh gosh, dad was on the call. I don't know if he's still on. I forget the name. I know there was a guy named Dave from Colorado at one point that trained him. He also and I remember Dave, and I'll tell you why I remember Dave because Dave was a trainer from Colorado, and the very first roller coaster I rode was with my dad and Dave at SeaWorld. So, like, that's the only guy I remember. I'll ask Dad, Tom, and find out for you who were the real impactful sales trainers. But I remember Dave. I remember Dave in that roller coaster.
Was this a family business for him too, or was he the first generation in the security industry?
Yeah, he was first generation into it. So he had done some other things before, restaurants, real estate, insurance. And they say once you get into the security industry, like you can never leave. I guess that's what happened to him. And so far, that's been the case with me.
Awesome. Well, I'll keep watching that chat. If you guys have any other questions, drop them in. But I kind of want to connect the dots between what we talked about at the beginning to where we are now. You started in this family owned and operated alarm business. Now you're in distribution, but you still work with, like you said, family owned alarm businesses. You still print for, if they buy one Qualys panel, you're going to print it no matter what. You take care of everybody, no matter what size they are. So, do you see a little bit of your story in the people that you work with today? Like how has that translated for you working with on the other side?
Yeah, it's funny. My closest friends are in the alarm industry, and some of my closest friends are the second generation, at least the second generation, maybe third generation sons of folks that are in the alarm business. And it's been interesting. Like, I don't attribute our growth to being exceptionally good at distribution. We are. I think we do a really good job of it. If there's anybody on here wondering, we're really good distributor. But I really don't attribute it to that. I really attribute it to our very deep understanding of our prospective of our existing partners and our prospective partners. I could sit down to dinner with, Taylor Sears and his dad Dwight, and I know them, and I knew them before I knew them because we'd lived, very similar experiences, right? Like I know what it's like to work for dad. I know what it's like to get involved in the family business. And so I think it's really more than anything helped me to understand our customers. We do support some very large companies where it's not, the family that you get to talk with dad or mom or the son or daughter. I will admit I'm a bit biased though, because I'm a relationships guy and the folks I most enjoy doing business with are really the family companies. That don't get me wrong. I don't want to say no to the other folks. We're happy to support them too. But it's just been really nice to build so many friendships and very deep relationships with many of those family owned businesses. And we just have so many shared experiences, which is nice.
All right, we did get a couple more questions in the chat. What does your wife do? And how many people on your team have you had total since you started SS&Si?
Okay, so my wife is a pediatric nurse practitioner, and so that means she's much smarter than I am. And let's see, how many staff on my team? I don't know how many staff we've ever had. I know now we're sitting at about 20. I should know. I think it's 25 folks full time, and then a couple of part timers as well. I think that's one of the most exciting things for me too, especially around the holidays, because we're going to bring everybody together for our Christmas party. That's been one of the most fulfilling things for me to see. Like, hey, here's all these people and these families that like this business that's growing, like it supports them. And that's a lot of pressure too. I think that's probably something that maybe a lot of business owners don't realize early on is that at some point as you start growing and building your team, it's not just about achieving success and growth for your own financial benefit. It's like, hey, I need to grow this company and I need this company to be successful because there's 25 folks and their families relying on that. So, that's why I got so much anxiety, but no, thankfully we've been able to, do a really great job, I think, growing the team and supporting them, which has been, and it goes both ways, right? I mean, I think that, when you have a really awesome team and you have an opportunity to support them and serve them, it just comes back. Like, I think about really long tenured folks on my team that, I mean, they've really become like family. And that's, again, that's just one of the things I think our customers really relate to too, right? Like we're not a multinational, multi-billion dollar global conglomerate. Like we're a small business like they are. And that comes with the challenges that all small businesses have, but I think it also comes with a level of like realness, right? Like we do business with people and they do business with people on our side too. I think that's been an important part of it.
All right, well, I got one more question for you. What's next? What's next for SS&Si, and what's next for you personally? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, trick or treating tonight is next for me. I'm very excited about that. But, I think when we got started, as I mentioned very early on, I thought in order to be successful, we needed to be like our largest competitors. And I tried to figure that out and I couldn't. And then I realized by being different, we were growing and achieving some level of success. And originally, I thought that that would only attract kind of some of the real small alarm companies, which we love and we're thankful for. But what's really surprised me is all of this same stuff that we're about and the things that we do, it's attracted some really great, very sizable family-owned companies and larger companies. And so what I see continued growth, not just growth in terms of revenue, but I see continued growth in terms of partnerships. We're having conversations with companies I never would have dreamed, never could have even imagined. Like, hey, like I could call the CEO of this company and he would take my call. Like, wow, like this is crazy. This is nuts. And I think that we're kind of at this like tipping point. Like it's, you go, you climb, you climb, you climb. And I think we're getting ready to really gain some speed and I'm excited for that. Controlled growth, consistent effort, but I think, we're really well positioned better than I would have ever really imagined and could have imagined. We're really positioned for kind of some explosive growth. And I'm excited because I think about this. I look around and I see my team and I'm like, guys, I don't know if you see it, but like I see it. I see what's coming, and I'm so excited to just take a really great team along for the ride and dominate. That's what I I don't mean for that to. I hope that doesn't come off in a bad way, but domination. I think we're absolutely gonna kill it over the next few years. So I'm real excited about that.
Definitely. I'm excited too. The past year has been a lot of learning the ropes, learning about SS&SI, seeing where we are now, and I'm excited for 2026. We got a lot of great ideas coming, and I'm excited to be on your team. And it was great talking to you today. Anybody else have any other questions? Jake, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
First of all, again, Tyler, really, so glad to have you on the team. Thanks for doing this too. I think we need to do more like, just kind of you and I chatting with folks here on it because you've got
Yeah,
such
for
a great
sure.
radio voice and I hate the sound of my own voice. So I like to hear yours. But guys, number one, I just want to thank the folks in the call that are here that have been a huge part of our story. We would not be here. I don't want anybody to misunderstand that, effort is the only ingredient to success, you have to see that effort received by somebody on the other end, right? And I'm so thankful for our many incredible partners, many who are on the call today who recognize what we're about, who are willing to say, "Hey, like I want to do business with this company and I want to be a part of their success story." I'm so proud of the opportunity, to print logos on products and be a small part of, so many individual success stories out there. I want to thank everybody for jumping on the call today and for joining us for coffee break. If we don't do business today, my invitation to you is to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you and see how we can support you. But whether you do business with us or not, you're always welcome on this call. And if there's ever any topics you want to talk about, feel free to send those in as well. Tyler and everybody on the call, I want to wish you a very happy Halloween. I hope you have a great time with your families this weekend. And thanks so much for being here.